So implicit racial bias is generally unconscious, meaning that we don't even recognize it's a belief we hold. It's automatic, right? It happens lightning fast without much thinking or intentional processing. It just pops into your head. And what can make it so uncomfortable to accept is that implicit racial bias is generally contrary to our stated values. And this seeming contradiction is what stirs up all sorts of feelings and emotion. And it's why it's so important to enter this work from a more wise and loving place, or compassionate place, as Dr. Amanda really helps us to ground ourselves in. Next slide, please. And so we call it implicit racial bias because it's under the surface. It's not overt. It's not explicit. We're not talking about the way racism shows up in neo-Nazis and KKK rallies. We're talking about the more subtle ways that we have been conditioned. So implicit racial bias does not mean, right? It does not mean that you have hate in your heart. It means that we have been socialized into a culture that favors whiteness. Now, and this can be overwhelming. So let's just take a deep breath together and try to stay settled in our bodies. We're gonna watch, on the next slide, we're gonna watch a video by Dr. Jerry Kang, and he's gonna talk to us about the brain science behind how the associations that influence implicit bias are created. All right.
How then do we measure these implicit biases that we might not even be aware of? Do we put you under hypnosis? Do we put you under an fMRI and take brain scans? What about something simpler, like playing a video game? In order to understand, I need you to participate. The rules are very, very easy. All you have to do is run down columns 1, 2, and 3, and as quickly as possible, ignore the letters, shout out the colors. So for column number 1, you would say green, red, purple, green. I need all of you to participate. Ready, set, go. Green, red, purple, green. It's a TED audience. I assumed it would be a little bit better. Okay, second time, here we go. Ignore the letters, focus only on the colors. Ready, set, go.
Green, red, purple, green, blue, yellow, blue, red, green, yellow, red, purple.
Oh yeah, you're screaming. So third time should be the charm. Now I want you to focus only on the colors. Be blind to the letters as if Martin Luther King Jr. implored you to do it. Ready, set, go. All right. It's like being stuck in molasses in a winter January, right? So now you get it. Now you see it. The whole point is that any two concepts that are tightly associated in our brains, we can actually pair together very quickly. So when you see the word RED and the color red, we can sort them very quickly together. By contrast, when you see the word RED and the color green, we hesitate. It's like our CPUs are thrashing about trying to get the right answer. We're not stupid. We got admitted as participants in the TED Talk. Like, we should be doing this faster, but it takes a little bit longer. But that's the insight, right? That you could use the speed of sorting as a signal for how tight things are mentally associated in this cloud that we don't have access to. That is the underlying logic of the implicit association test invented by Tony Greenwald. And you sit in front of a computer and play essentially a video game. You're flashed, for example, on the standard black-white attitudinal IAT, pictures of white folks, white men. Hit a key with your left hand. If you see a picture of a black man, hit a key with your right hand. We could do that. It's actually easy. When you see sometimes good words like beauty and joy, hit a key with your left hand. By contrast, when you see words like filth and sick, bad words, hit a key with your right hand. We can follow these instructions. Notice the actual arrangement. White faces and good words are on the same response key. Black faces and bad words are on the same response key. And we fly through that test. But because psychologists are devious people, sometimes randomize and counterbalance, you get runs like this, where you get white faces and bad words on the same hand, and black faces and good words on the same hand. And then we hesitate, we stutter, we make a few more errors, we go a little bit more slowly. It's that delta in time that by definition is deemed to be a measure of your bias.
So in short, what we see is that our brains have been wired due to cultural conditioning to associate good things with white faces and bad things with Black faces. And this holds true for other non-white groups as well. And so to share a personal story about how this operates, I was walking my dog the other day and I saw a Black man in a hoodie. And it was, and the word suspicious popped into my head. It wasn't a conscious thought, it was automatic, and it was contrary to my values. And rather than try to deny it or justify it or beat myself up about it, I acknowledged it. I took a few deep breaths and I really just paid attention to what was happening in my body without reacting, right? Without acting on that thought. And I realized that man was my mail person. He was delivering mail in my neighborhood. That's how insidious implicit racial bias can be. And that's just one story. Now that we understand a bit more about how implicit bias develops, let's look a little bit more about how it operates. We're going to watch a short video about a study done with preschool teachers. And I can speak from personal experience of substitute teaching kindergarten for only one half day, that preschool teachers are in the work because they love and care for our children. And in my book, they're practically saints. What we'll see is that even with all that love in their hearts, implicit racial bias still operates in ways that can harm children. You can love kids and have implicit racial bias. Let's watch.
There's a new study out of the Yale Child Study Center that I had to read a few times just to believe what it was telling me. The researchers recruited about 135 preschool teachers. They had them watch video footage of 4 kids playing, a Black boy, a Black girl, a white boy, and a white girl. And they told the teachers, their subjects, watch the video, there may be some challenging behaviors. As soon as you see something that could become challenging, hit the enter key on your keypad. Well, here's the trick. There was no challenging behavior. The researchers were using eye scan technology to see which child the teachers were looking at the most. And what they found is that the teachers, both white and Black alike, spent the most time watching the Black boy, waiting for bad behavior that never came. There's one more really interesting headline in this study, which comes later. The teachers were also given a 1-paragraph description to read of a hypothetical child with a stereotypical name who behaves pretty badly in class, pushes, scratches, throws toys. And some of the teachers were also given some biographical information that helped make sense of that behavior. They were told that the child lives with his mother, father has been in and out for years, they're relatively poor, the mother is depressed, works 3 jobs. The researchers wanted to know if knowing this information made the teachers more empathetic to the kid. Well, here's the shock. It did, but only if the teacher and the child were of the same race. If the teacher and the child, a white teacher and a Black child, or even a Black teacher and a white child, knowing that biographical information, those teachers were less empathetic towards those students. And here's why this matters. Imagine if this is true, if there's this empathy deficit in preschool, well, imagine where else that's true.
Yeah, imagine where else that's true. That's a powerful question. These studies are so important because they help us understand that despite our best intentions and loving hearts, we may still operate from a place of racial bias, and these actions have real life consequences. So rather than get overwhelmed by shame, blame, or guilt, this is really an invitation to lean into the discomfort and become more aware of how racial bias is operating in our society, in our neighborhoods, and in our own hearts and minds. It's a lot to take in. So again, let's just take a couple deep breaths to settle into our bodies. These breaths really help us expand our capacity for compassion, moving us collectively towards justice. So next slide, please. While implicit bias may be largely automatic and unconscious, how we act is not. Racial justice work focuses on implicit racial bias because it's a powerful site of action for us as individuals. With practice, we can develop the ability to slow down, pay attention, and make the choice to act in alignment with our values. The impact of implicit bias is not inevitable. We have a choice.